Mathematics was always in our lives throughout the history of human improvement, from the foundation of will to the foundation of money and many other important events. Equations played an important role throughout the history of mathematics and humanity. Today, we will be focusing on this topic. So, what is an equation? The word equation comes from the Latin root word equo, which means equal, and the dictionary definition is a statement that values of two mathematical expressions are equal, and it is indicated by the sign, of course, equal. Or if we do not look for the mathematical way, it is called the process of equating one thing with another, which will be maybe closer to today's topic because we will be talking about and focusing on the daily basis of equations in our daily life. In our daily lives, equations play a huge role in simple mathematical problems that we solve, and we do not realize we were using equations. For example, when you calculate how much your money will be able to buy while grocery shopping, you use equations. Or when you look at the recipes for cooking, you also use equations. For example, when you need 2 servings of that food, you would use 200 grams of flour, for example. But when you need 1, you will only use 100 grams of flour. And this is just the most basic level of equations in our daily life. Instead of this daily usage, equations also need to be used in scientific actions, but of course in a much more complex way. For example, in physics, there are many equations that help us to find other quantities in solving problems. And I can say that they are not simple and hard to memorize. Or most basically in finances, the whole idea is about equation. When you invest more in a winning stake, you earn more profit out of that stake. That is just a basic example, but I think that may help a lot. After explaining what an equation is in general, I'd like to go on with some examples about the daily life basis of equations. Firstly, I'd like to say we use equations while calculating our body mass index to see whether we are healthy or not. We use equations in every step of cooking meals. These are, as I said, some basic examples, but equations are all around the world in all kind of activities. And thirdly, I would like to go on with managing the outgoings and incomes of a business. With that being said, the whole finance industry works all the time with mathematical formulas, as we know, and naturally equations too. When we manage our own finances, we use equations, and companies do the same for the bigger amount of money. I want to give an example for an industry that I'm currently interested in. It is the gaming industry and those technological companies. I will use some graphs to explain my idea better. Not only the gaming industry, but the social media usage has increased a lot during the COVID times. Numbers of consumers increased in a huge amount. And therefore, companies of the gaming industry decided to also get bigger naturally. And they increased the worker amount in their companies. However, now, 3 years after actual COVID times, gaming usage and social media usage has decreased around the world because the world has got much normal compared with 2020 or 21, and popular gaming companies has been recently firing a lot of people, and this has been a big problem in the 2024 in mostly USA, I can say. And here's a graph explaining the situation I'm talking about. So the companies made an equation during COVID. More consumer we have, the more money we should spend in for getting bigger. However, things did not go as they wanted, like an increasing line, a direct line. In the beginning of 2024, many popular companies fired like 10% of their workers, which means about 1,000 of people suddenly getting fired. I'm talking about only one company. And while managing this problem and deciding to do this, companies used equations, mathematical equations. And in my opinion, this is an interesting example. While I was researching through websites to get some information for making this video, I've seen some people writing really different ideas about equations. Then I realized that those ideas were really interesting, and at first I could not really think about them, and I could not really think from that point of view. People used interesting ways to explain the idea of equations, like this one. Equations are an expression of human logic, and they can stretch only as far as the human logic can go. So this one is about the limits of equations or math in general. They can go how much we can think about it, and it is really interesting. There are maybe some amounts that we cannot think about it, and we name that amount infinity. So there might be some amount that human brain cannot think about and cannot do any kind of operation or equation on it, but we named them just infinity. And but when we think about it, or if we can think about those numbers, they are just available for doing any kind of equation or doing any kind of mathematical operation. I know this sounds basic at first, but when we think deeper about it, it actually goes deeper. But this video is not about that philosophical way of mathematics. But I would like to go for some more, because this one may actually be more interesting. Life equals the death to birth equation. So this one actually teaches a lot in the philosophical way and psychological way too. Like when I saw this equation, it made me think that how we can actually live a better life, maybe a longer life, when we think about in this equations way. If we live the life happily, more in a happy and positively way. And here is such an example. In this photo you can see this one is also great to understand how important it is to live more happily and think positively, as I've said. As you might guess, there are many sayings throughout the history about the importance of mathematics in general. Lastly, I would like to give some of these quotes. Firstly, mathematics knows no races or geographic boundaries. For mathematics, the cultural world is one country, by David Hilbert, German mathematician. And then secondly, by Albert Einstein, pure mathematics is, in its way, the poetry of logical ideas. By Dean Schlichter, go down deep enough into anything and you will find mathematics. And lastly, by Galileo Galilei, nature is written in mathematical language. All these quotes show us the significance of mathematics in our lives, plus how important mathematics is to be able to think about logic or nature. These guys were really important men for the improvement of the world, and most of them actually worked for many other subjects rather than mathematics, and their comments on mathematics being this positive and this caring about mathematics shows us actually how mathematics is much more important than the other subjects they worked on, because mathematics actually create and or help those subjects to be made, and therefore they also showed this importance in their quotes. So, what have we learned from this video? I firstly defined what an equation is in a basic way and said the most known things about equations. And in the second part, I explained the significance of equations in our everyday life, in daily life, in the simplest way. And I also mentioned that there are much more detailed usage of equations in science or finances and many other subjects. I also gave an example of an industry I'm interested in currently. I would like to talk about that industry. And thirdly, I talked about the philosophical way people thought about equations. And yeah, these were all about equations in general. And I hope that this video was informative for you guys to learn about the significance of equations in our daily lives, the daily life basis. And I hope you have learned and enjoyed this video, and thank you guys.